Okay, so I get a lot of emails and messages on Instagram and by email, which is great. I love it because when I make these videos, I kind of make them and just send them out into the world. And it's nice when something comes back to me or people communicate with me from all over the world. And it's just nice to have that sort of interaction. A lot of questions that I get is about looking after diesels. So I understand that for you guys, depending on where you are in the world, I'm talking to you guys in America and Canada, you're not really familiar with having turbo diesels and what you guys call small capacity turbo diesels, which is just normal cars for us here, and how to look after them. And you know, to me, I figured that this is all basically common knowledge until I realized that, hey, it's not really that common for you guys. And there's a lot of sort of fear around having a diesel. Also a lot of misinformation. Some people maybe have one diesel in their lives that you might have heard about, and they probably didn't know themselves how to look after it, and it was probably unreliable for them. And so on starts that sort of education of misinformation. And I thought I'd make a really quick video with just the basics on how to look after something like this: a Pajero, Nissan Safari, Nissan Terrano, Hilux Surf, Land Cruiser, Delica, any of those Japanese four-wheel drive turbo diesels. Doesn't have to be a four-wheel drive, doesn't have to be a turbo diesel. As long as it's a diesel, all of this will apply. I've had two Pajeros, a Navara, which was so old it was still called a Datsun. I've had a couple of Land Cruisers, and a lot of four-wheel drives, a lot of diesels. And 100%, no BS, not one of them has ever let me down in the slightest way. I mean, they did not miss a beat. So I can wholeheartedly say that they are dead set reliable. And you only have to look at the numbers to back that up. A petrol Land Cruiser might make it to 430,000 kilometers, maybe 600,000 before it loses compression and it needs a rebuild. Whereas a turbo diesel or a diesel Japanese four-wheel drive will quite happily make it past 1 million kilometers and still be running relatively well, well up that. So diesels are built to last. All you have to do is maintain them. So what do you do to maintain them? Well, diesels are very particular about three things: oils, so engine oil, filters, and fuel. So the engine oil that you use could be mineral, could be synthetic, or could be semi-synthetic. That really doesn't make that much of a difference in a diesel, so long as it's specific to diesel engines. You have to use diesel engine oil. Why? It's got different additive packages in there, specifically detergents to carry that soot away. Petrol engine oil does not work in a diesel. It might be fine, it might be the same grade, but it does not have the additive package that diesel engines absolutely need. You can always use diesel engine oil in a petrol vehicle, but you cannot use petrol oil in a diesel engine. So that's one thing that you must do. Replace the engine oil every 5, 10, 15,000 kilometers, depending on the type of oil that you use, with specific diesel engine oil. I get asked very often about what kind of grade engine oil diesel's like. In my experience, and I'm no expert, 5W40, 10W50, anything within that range, even 0W50, if your pocket can stretch to afford that type of oil, is the perfect kind of oil for these cars. The oil not to use is anything from sort of 0W20. It's not the first number, the winter number that you have to worry about. It's the last number, the hot running temperature. Anything 30 and under, it will not like. And even saying that, if you're using, say, a 5W30, I hope that you're in Siberia, because these engines like a minimum of 40 weight at hot running. With a petrol engine or a gasoline engine, chances are you've never heard about replacing fuel filters. The big thing about turbo diesels, or any diesel, is the fuel filter. They're really particular with their filters and their fuel. So petrol, gasoline, is a solvent, and it naturally sort of cleans out the injectors and that sort of stuff, keeps the fuel tank nice and clean. With a diesel, it's a really heavy sort of oily fuel, and it's subject to gunking up, and it can even get algae in the fuel, and also microbial bacteria. So that filter has a big job. It makes sure that your injector pump and your injectors stay nice and clean, nice and lubricated, and within operating spec. If you don't replace your fuel filter, and I've seen guys in North America run their turbo diesels, and it doesn't have to be Japanese, Ram diesels, Cummins diesels that you get over there, basically run them until the fuel filter light comes on and then replace it. And by then, it is just this gooey, gunked up piece of varnish. A lot of these fuel filters have paper elements inside it, And you can imagine that over time that will break down. So I would say do not go more than 3 years without replacing the fuel filter. I do mine every 2 years. If you use your car in really harsh environments or in places where the diesel fuel might not be a very good quality. So that normally happens here in Australia in remote towns that might only get refueled, the gas stations themselves, maybe once every couple of months. And so that fuel sits and it gets condensation and water inside the fuel system. In that case, if you're doing that sort of traveling, replace your fuel filter every year, maybe even twice a year if that's where you live. Otherwise, I do mine every second service, every 2 years with the air filter. Or what you don't want to do is just let it run more than 3 years. Okay, air filter. So diesels really rely on a load of clean air to combust that fuel properly. Again, the same as fuel filters, replace it at least every 2 years or 3 years. Do not exceed that if you live in harsh, dusty sort of environments. Check it regularly and replace it frequently. So if you do those 3 things, protect the engine with engine oil, looking after the fuel system, the injector pump and the injectors by running clean filters, and being mindful of the fuel that you put in it, you will have a nice, long, enjoyable lifespan out of your car. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.